Hi, welcome to the Alchemy of Healing, week 3. This week we are going to talk about self-esteem and self-worth. And to me, this is kind of the baseline foundation of not only mental health, but physical health, spiritual health, emotional health. All of it rests on the laurels of, do you have authentic, good, rich, deep, real self-esteem? And honestly, most people that I meet don't. Most people that you come across are enacting different ways, reacting, acting out in ways that are expressing how they actually have low self-esteem. Even arrogance, even people that you see as cocky or super self-assured or arrogant, they often can be the least self-confident and the least secure in themselves. They're just having to overcompensate, and it's irritating because it's not authentic, and we can feel that. We can feel that they're not being really true to who they are. So I really believe that this is the foundation of not only this entire course, but the entirety of what I do as a coach, as a healer, as a pharmacist, as a future counselor, is really the crux of all of this is getting down to, do we have authentic self-esteem, self-worth? Do we see that we are inherently valuable as conscious beings on this planet? In the same way that every child who comes forth has their own inherent worth, their own just right to be here, birthright to exist and be conscious and express themselves and contribute to our society, to the world. So this is what we're going to get into today. It really does follow the Making Friends with Fear video and theme, because the fear is that we aren't worthy. When it comes down to, I'm really hoping that you did your exercises last week and you kind of got to know fear, started to be in relationship with fear, with your own anxiety, and sought out some of the themes that are coming up. And often what I have found in myself and in my clients, in my friends, everybody, is that when you root out fear and you get to the root cause of what's going on, it's fear of being too much, fear of not being enough, fear of not being worthy or deserving. All of these different fears are rooted in not really believing that we're worthy. And the cause of this is this cycle that has happened where our parents who raised us, they also didn't believe that they were worthy, because their parents didn't believe that they were worthy, and their parents didn't believe they were worthy. And this idea, like a meme, gets translated down the lineage, down the family line, and that cycle never stops until one of us have the courage to alchemize the fear and look at it in the face, develop a relationship with it, and start to question it and ask, is it real? Is it real that I'm not worthy? And to me, the first place to start here is to recognize that first of all, none of us really asked to be here. We all just our parents had us, we were born, and we're these living creatures on the planet that are just trying to get by. We're trying to survive in our culture, in the world, and on one level, none of us really asked to be here. We just are here, depending on how you look at it. You could also look at it that we all asked to be here. We're all here for a reason, and I love that. I love that as well. But we won't get into the existential part of it today. I'd love to with you if you ever want to, but we'll keep it as practical as we can today. And so that means that because we're here, we didn't necessarily ask to be here, but we are here. And we are the product of millions and millions and millions of years of evolution. If you think of like way back to the Big Bang, we're all made of we literally all are made of stardust. And we are these intelligent creatures that came here or grew up here, came from the earth, and developed into the human species that we are. And that in and of itself is magic, miraculous. You can explain it with science, or you can explain it in whatever religious terms you want to, spiritual terms you want to. But I want to remind you that no matter how you look at it, it's cool and you're valuable just because you're here, inherently, just because you exist as a human on this planet. And if that brings up different feelings in you of you immediately want to argue with me or defend or say, yeah, but this person isn't as good as this person, and we start to make these hierarchies of I'm better than this person, or I'm inferior to this person, or, you know, like, how can we all be equal if there's murderers on the planet and there's these awful people that do all these awful things? Well, as soon as we get into that territory of one-upmanship or one-downmanship, part of that is biological, but like we've been discussing, when we start to mind hack and understand our own biology, understand those three parts of the brain, the reptilian brain, the fight or flight part of the brain, the limbic system, and the prefrontal cortex, when we start to use those together and have awareness and have consciousness around them, then we can actually kind of biohack into what's happening and understand our own systems and then the way they work. And part of the way that they work is our social brain is putting us in a pecking order or in a status kind of, oh, I'm better than this person, but I'm inferior to this person. Our brains do automatically do that. So we want to be conscious of when our minds are doing that and gently question, is it true? Because at the baseline, again, we are all different. That's for sure. There's talents that you have that I don't have. There's talents that I have that you don't have. There's things that make us very different as individuals, and that's all great. That's actually good for our species as a whole, is that kind of diversity. We actually need that diversity in order to thrive as a species. However, we are kind of working with and against this system which involves serotonin in our system that is making hierarchies. And so when I want you to pay close attention to, whenever you're interacting with someone, any place where you're putting yourself above or below somebody, just because of maybe one character trait or physical trait that they have. So let's say you meet somebody and they're really attractive and you don't feel as good as them because they are more attractive than you. Or let's say you meet somebody and you automatically assume that you're smarter than them. So where are all these places where you're either putting yourself above or below somebody else? We're just watching for when that's happening. And see if there's a theme, because there probably is a theme of some people will more gravitate to I'm better than, and some people will more gravitate to I'm not as good as. So either superior or inferior. And depending on what happened in your childhood and how you grew up and how your beliefs formed as a person growing up into our culture, you'll have a place that you go to more. For me, I tend to go more into the arrogant side of like, oh, like I'm better than that. But if you get to the root of it, it's actually fear that I'm not enough. And my system, my belief system, my whole personality tries to protect that actual feeling of not feeling enough by going into arrogance. So that's something that I discovered about myself. So now when I go into an arrogant thought, I'm like, oh, actually I'm feeling insecure here. And I have to remind myself as a practice, like I've harped on a few times, that it's a practice to remember these things and to remember that we are all different, but we're all equal. And just because somebody has different qualities than me that may be beneficial for them doesn't mean that I'm any worse or better than them. Okay, so that's kind of the first place to go, is to start to notice where you're one-upping or one-downing yourself in your mind when you're interacting with people, and just start to take note of that, because it does affect our behavior. It does affect how nervous we feel, how much fear comes up. It does affect how we self-talk to ourselves. It affects all these things. Okay, so again, kind of circling back, I hope that I really just was so excited about this topic, I've just jumped right into it. So I hope that you followed my advice from last time and you grounded into the moment, into this time that we have together in this video. I've got my water. Remember to drink water. It's really important. I'm going to take a sip now, because we forget to take care of ourselves. I drink too much coffee. I have to make it a practice that for every cup of coffee I drink 2 glasses of water, so that I stay hydrated, so that my skin stays nice and my intestinal system stays regular and my whole body just feels better when I drink enough water. And water with lemon is even better. But as you can see, I'm here at work today and I forgot my lemon. So remember to do that, remembering to intentionally move into your spaces and set that actual intention for every time you transition into a new environment where we are setting intentions. And so my intention was excitement today, so I'm really excited about this topic. So like I said, inherently we're worthy. We just have to remember that. Now this is important again, because it is part of the root of the entire. So last time we talked about the root cause of fear and how it's about feeling powerlessness or feeling unworthy, and how that relates to just the way that we show up in the world and the way that we take action and we behave. That's what the root cause of all these fears are. So if we can bring ourselves back to using the fears as a kind of a guide, because they're loud and they're painful. Okay, so I have this loud, painful fear that's causing this emotion in me of I'm not good enough, or I'm scared, or I'm nervous. Bringing it back down to what's actually going on here. Is it a fear of being worthless or powerless? Is that true? Is that belief true? Okay, so if that belief isn't true, then how do I show up in the world like a person who does love themselves and does believe in their self-worth and does have self-esteem and confidence and competence in the world? What does that type of person look like? What does it look like specifically for me? And the next thing that we'll talk about next week is about boundaries, and how using, maybe it's next week or the week after, but this is really a core foundation for having and expressing good boundaries, is it actually protects your self-worth. It contains your sense of self. And that's really important, because when we are expressing our boundaries, then we are actually in practice showing the world that we love each other and that we love ourselves first and foremost, because those boundaries actually are kind. They're kind to ourselves, they're kind to other people. They may be uncomfortable at first, especially when we're not used to confrontation and we're not used to setting clear boundaries, and we've just kind of been letting people cross our boundaries. Then because we've had low self-worth to begin with, then it can be a little bit difficult at the beginning to be in that yellow zone, that discomfort zone. But as time goes on, we get better at it. And then that's the cycle that continues, is the more I can practice this self-care, self-esteem, remembering my inherent self-worth, and doing that by expressing my boundaries and knowing my boundaries, knowing the needs that I need met, understanding that I'm worthy in and of myself, and that's the baseline of how I'm operating in the world, then that literally changes everything. Changes everything. Because we're no longer wasting time and effort and energy. This like really precious resource that we have is time and our energy. And when we're not wasting that on proving that we're good enough, because we already inherently know that that's true, then that opens up opportunities everywhere. So, and that also calms down the anxiety, and it calms down our nervous system, and we can just show up and be confident in the world and just know that we can handle any situation that comes our way, and then we can respond to life rather than be reactive. And that's my goal for you, is that you are able to enter peacefully into any situation, whether it's giving a talk at work, or it's meeting new people at a party, or it's going into your family dynamics, like family reunions or suppers, or that's kind of the most challenging one, that's the true test. Anything that you need to do, you're showing up in the world present and calm and peaceful, and you're able to take whatever is thrown your way and you can alchemize that back out as love, back out as a response that's appropriate for the moment. And sometimes it's not always just kindness. Sometimes it is anger. And sometimes we need to use that anger to express our boundaries, and that's healthy. All of these things are healthy, these expressions of joy, of love, of anger, of grief, of sorrow, of excitement, of whatever it is. All of it is super healthy, and we want to have a full range of ability to express all of these things that naturally come out from us. So in order to do that, we have to be in approval of ourselves. We have to really remember that we're inherently worthy just for being conscious on this planet. And then the second part of that comes our skills, our skill set, our ability to contribute to the tribe. And so I'm not going to discount this, because I think it's important too that we want to feel useful. And there's an evolutionary drive towards wanting to feel useful, right? It's the more we can feel like we're contributing to the tribe, to the society, the safer we feel that our contribution is keeping us safe and keeping us, if other people value our skill set and need us, then we'll feel, like we're not going to get kicked out. We're not going to, they're not going to decide that we're no longer useful and just, send us on an iceberg and bye. So that's not going to happen if we're feeling like we have value to add to the tribe. However, and again, that's like the same kind of biological drive or evolutionary drive as the hierarchy system. It's there for a reason, but we want to make sure that we're not tangling that wire with we have to give, or we have to always be giving, or we have to always be providing quote unquote value, or we have to be like overly giving of ourselves or overly needed in order to stay safe, because that's actually not true either. That just leads to burnout. So we want to start to bring some awareness around, where do we feel like we have to prove our sense of worth by feeling like we're needed. And this is, again, something that's very common with women, but also men too, because they get a lot of their sense of worth and value from being a capable member of society. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just not the source of your worthiness, the things that you can do and achieve and provide, those are great, and we want to continue doing them so that we feel like we're giving back to this culture and society that helps us be safe. But we also want to recognize that it's not the be all end all, and there's going to be times where we need rest and we need to relax, rejuvenate, restore, not be so busy doing and just have the chance to rest and be. Those are all things that keep us healthy and able to continue to contribute. It's like, when cars are racing around a track and they're like those really long races and they have to do pit stops. So we've kind of got this idea of like, okay, I gotta keep going, keep going. But if you're actually playing the long game, the long race, you do have to take the pit stops. You have to take some time out and restore and make sure that you're being taken care of and that you're receiving as much as you're giving so that you can keep going, so that the game can keep playing. Otherwise, you're gonna burn out. And that's what ends up happening in our bodies, is that we keep giving, trying to prove that we're worthy, that we're good, that we're don't kick us out, like don't kick me out, I'm good, I'm helping, I'm doing something, see me, I'm worthy. And this is the energy that we have, and then eventually we get tired, we get sick, we get burnt out, and then ironically we end up dependent on the system or on the society because we've worked ourselves to the bone and now we actually have nothing left to give. But if you keep it as a sustainable process by taking when you need to take and giving when you are able to give, then you actually can sustain this long term and you feel good, you feel fulfilled, you feel happy. So right now, what I notice in our society is there's too much on the giving side, and what I think that is rooted in is this feeling of having to prove yourself. And everybody's kind of doing it to a certain extent. So I want to pull back and make sure that the self-care is going on and that you're giving yourself time to relax and rejuvenate and take when you need to take and receive when you need to receive so that you can keep going. It's really, really important. So next in the workbook, I kind of talk a little bit about ways you can practice self-care, and like I explained, boundaries are a good way to practice self-care, self-worth, to actually exhibit your worthiness. So you can start with that basis of, okay, I'm going to watch for ways where I don't believe that I'm worthy. I'm going to start to pick up on different belief sets and pay attention and observe those thoughts that are based in I'm not good enough, or this person's better, or this person's not as good. Watching for those things and seeing if you can catch them in real time and be like, oh, right, that's not actually true. We're all equal. And recognizing too that the more that you are good within your sense of self, then you can allow other people to be good within their senses of self as well. So when you have good boundaries, it means the people around you have more permission to have good boundaries and self-worth too. So it's like a ripple effect that happens. When I feel good, the people around me have permission to feel good, and they have more reason to feel good because I'm taking care of myself. So then they can also benefit from that, right? I was going to give you an example, and I can't think of it off the top of my head now. But anyway, so practicing self-care is really important, and I have a list of things: rest, attention, acceptance, focusing on the process instead of just the outcome. The whole journey should be fun. If it's not, then reevaluate. It could be just a perception shift, like it could be a perception shift from I hate doing the dishes to I can make the dishes fun if I put music on, if I, just change my mindset around it. So focusing on the process, having choice, having ease, making adjustments, being mindful, pleasure, generosity, like carving out time for these things and being aware that you need them and that you deserve them and that they're part of your sustainability in contributing to society. Okay, so for your exercise this week, what I want you to do is think of some ways that you already do this well and give yourself a pat on the back for that, because I'm sure there's some things that you're doing. Maybe you do take time to take nature walks because you really love that. That's a really good example. So where are some places that you're already doing self-care, self-worth practices? And then build on them. Maybe add something new in that you've always wanted to do but you haven't. Okay, so maybe it's getting a massage, or maybe it's going out, letting your husband take you out on a date, or receiving a compliment. Instead of brushing off a compliment, you actually receive it and you're like, yeah, you know, like I am well dressed, or something like that. So just taking the time to build on the practices of remembering your self-worth, recognizing what you're already doing well, and then building on that. And then also explore in yourself ways that you personally, I gave you some examples, but you personally can remember your worthiness. So what are the things that you often make you feel worthless or often make you feel bad about yourself? Start to identify those, and then when those things come up, it's give yourself a little mantra of remember that we're all equal. Give yourself some kind of little mantra like that, so that when these things do pop up, you're actually starting to practice your new belief set that you are worthy. And what I actually had to do this recently, where I made a big list of all the things that I am good at, but I tie a little bit too much to my self-worth. So basically it was a whole big list of some things that were like my specific skill sets. Like I'm good at public speaking, I'm good at listening, I'm good at da-da-da-da-da-da. And those are real things that I am good at. But what I was doing is I was overly relying on those things to be what my self-worth was about. So make a list of all of the things that you love about yourself. Maybe get somebody else to write a list about all the things they love about you, and take it a step further and say, I actually don't need any of these things to make me worthy. They're great and they help me contribute to society, and they help me contribute to my family and everything, and that feels great and that's good, but they don't mean value or worthiness in my inherent sense of self. That is a given. Okay, so because it's sneaky, our brains are sneaky that way, and we want to make sure that we're really getting to, we are worthy no matter when we're making mistakes, no matter when we feel like we're failing, doesn't matter, because inherently we're worth, God, we're just like really cool. We're just so amazing. We're beings that are on this rock circling fire in the middle of the universe, like, and we're conscious, and we're like just like hanging out, making things and taking care of each other, and that's so cool that we're doing that. And remembering that we're depending, like, or if it helps, like I'm one of God's children, like that's a good way to look at it, depending on your background, your spirituality, your religion, like whatever way feels good to you, to remember that you are a child of God, that you are this biological miracle. You are just, it's just so cool that you're here. And when you show up in the world with that mindset, what shifts for you? Okay? And so the last part of this little exercise that's in the workbook is, what resistances and beliefs come up around giving yourself these things? So what's stopping you from having this sense of self-worth? Start to think about that too. What are the beliefs or the like really ingrained ideas or thought patterns or things that maybe your parents used to say to you or your siblings used to say to you, or they still do, that are grating, and they really feel like they're working against you believing that you have self-worth. And what I encourage you to do with that is to talk to somebody that you trust about those things and just kind of release, because when we talk about this stuff with people, especially the heavy stuff that's full of shame needs darkness and secrecy in order to, as Brene Brown puts it, I recommend all of her books. Excuse me. But there's one in particular where she talks about this, but I'll make a link of one of her books. But Brene Brown talks about shame, and shame needs this secrecy in order to keep living. But if you share it with somebody, even though it's hard and it's vulnerable to share these deep, dark secrets that you have about yourself and how you feel about yourself, it's hard to share those things with other people. As soon as you do, it brings it into the light, and probably that person is going to be like, you know what, like I've felt like that too. And as soon as somebody else you know is in the same boat as you, it's like, it can release, it can leave your system. But what keeps it in your system is secrecy. So share it with a friend, with a coach, with a counselor. I encourage you to do that. And then next week we are going to talk about boundaries. So that's really good too. Again, really good job. You're doing awesome. Everything that you're learning here is so important, and it's kind of, we're grazing the surface at the beginning here, and we can go in every single one of these topics. We can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and keep peeling back the layers of the onion. So I encourage you to keep exploring, keep journaling, look at your outcome statements. What are you wanting to achieve? How's your body doing? Tune into your body, tune into your sensations, talk to fear, and get back into that feeling of when you were a kid, before all of the crap happened to you, when you just were happy to be alive as a kid, just carefree. That's the kind of sensations, again, we want to play with and experience again as much as possible. So I encourage you to do that. Thanks again, and I will see you next week.